Hello folks and welcome. You're watching MadVaper Gaming and this is my first true e-cigarette review. Now you may recognize me from MadVape's YouTube channel because I do their videos as well. However, those are not reviews, they are feature overviews. It's supposed to be more informational than everything. This is my own personal YouTube channel where I will be uploading game streams. I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/MadVaper. You can check it out 5 nights a week. But today I am going back to vaping because I want to do a review on the ELeaf Lemo 2 RTA. This is rebuildable tank atomizer. I know a lot of people really liked the original Lemo and the Lemo drop. I actually never got to use those. We had planned on ordering them, but we never got around to doing it. And now the Lemo 2 is out, and I'm really hoping that we'll pick this up eventually. But I got one as a sample, so I thought I'd let you guys see it. You can see I don't have very much liquid in there, and that's because I'm about to break it apart and show you a rebuild on it too. The great thing about this, what I've really liked about it, is that you can vape it like a Kayfun, or you can vape it like an Atlantis. And it's kind of, you have to build it differently, and depending on which one you want to do. So right now I have this at 30 watts, and that's just about where I vape in Atlantis. Sometimes I'll turn it up to 35. Oddly enough, it's not as consistent as the Atlantis. Every now and then you'll get burnt hits, and through a lot of experimentation, I've kind of narrowed it down, and I'm going to help you guys out in building it for the Atlantis type experience like so. And that's if you want to do the lung hits with the higher wattage, higher being 30 to 35 watts. Right now this is a 26 gauge build. It's just a regular open coil. So from what I've seen from the original ELeaf Lemo is that it used to have air holes, and now there's air slots. There's one on each side. And up here, if you'll focus, you can see that there's a slot here, and this actually turns and opens up, and that's your valve to fill it. So it's really, really easy to refill. So that's really, really cool. Another thing you can do with that is if you do get dry hits, if it's not wicking fast enough, you can just open that up, and there's no more pressure holding the liquid in there, so it kind of feeds the liquid in. If you leave it open too long, of course, it's going to leak. But if you do it right, you just open it for like 5 to 10 seconds and then close it again. Usually that kind of clears it up. So the biggest thing that you should probably know about this is it's very difficult to do max VG liquid like you can do in the Atlantis. I've tried it. You can do it. You can, but again, you have to build it a certain way. The way I do it is I do the Rip Trippers pancake wicking method, where you cut the wicks real short and smush them so they're flat like a pancake. And that helps, but it's still not as good. What you really have to do, the biggest thing you have to do, is pull hard. You have to pull like you're pulling through something like this, the Troll, right? With like massive airflow, you pull like really fast. Of course, you're not going to be able to pull that fast because the airflow isn't as open, but you really got to suck on it. And by pulling really fast, you're sucking more liquid into the chamber instead of just, you know, kind of sitting there, because it actually is a really tightly sealed tank, so the liquid doesn't move without some encouragement. So yeah, it's the Lemo 2. Now I don't have the box, but the box comes with a ton of shit. You have the tank, obviously, the drip tip. There's a pre-made coil that comes in here, and in all honesty, it's like the fucking best pre-made coil that, like, when China sends you shit and you know, look at like the coil they built for you, especially like when the Nimbus came out, you know, and Nimbus clones anywhere, like RTAs always used to come with some kind of crappy 32 gauge silica you know, coil in there, and it was just terrible. So it's like the first thing you always do is, you know, you rip out the pre-made coil and you put your own in. And I actually vaped on the pre-made coil in here for about a day and a half before I, you know, I was curious and decided to rebuild it. So it does come built and perfectly usable. You'll also get a good amount of 24 gauge, what I believe is Kanthal, could be nichrome. It's 24 gauge wire in any case, and you get a good amount of it. I think it's like 3 feet you get, and it comes in a little spool like that big. You also get your tools. You get replacement O-rings, replacement screws. But what else? What else does it come with? Oh, it comes with 2 sheets of organic Japanese cotton, like legit organic Japanese cotton. So what else before I break this apart? It is Pyrex, if you're curious. It doesn't hold a whole lot of liquid, about 3 mils. It looks a lot bigger, but it's a really, really big chimney. So most of your liquid is going to be held up towards the top. And then like once it gets to where it looks like it's halfway full, it's really more like a quarter of the way full. Not that big of a deal though. It's a good size. It's 22 millimeters. I'm using it on the SmokeTech X Cube, which I am uploading a video for MadVapes right now. So if you are curious about the mod, go to YouTube and just search for MadVapes, and that video should be uploaded very, very shortly. And if you're not watching this on exactly the day that I'm uploading, today is April 10th at about 4 o'clock. So at around 6:30, you'll be able to go check out the X Cube, which is pretty cool. So I have it at 30 watts right now, and as long as I pull hard enough, it does not burn. This is the tank that I've been waiting for. I thought it was going to be the Kayfun V4 with the S kit, and the S kit, you know, you replace the pin, you replace the insulator, and it can handle high heat and has more airflow, but not really. It actually doesn't have that much airflow. Now, this is almost the same airflow as the Atlantis. It's a little bit tighter, but you kind of need it tighter to feed that liquid in more. Slightly less vapor at the same wattages, but way better flavor. Way better flavor. No break-in period or anything like that. I mean, it's pretty much only going to be as good as a coil you put in it. And the one I have in here is a 26 gauge open coil with organic Japanese cotton, basically. So it's a little bit better than the standard coils that come with the Atlantis or anything else that has that weird break-in time. So there's none of that. The flavor is outstanding. It's just as good as a Kayfun. Excuse me. Just as good as a Kayfun. But you can lung hit it. And that's really what I've been wanting. I want a rebuildable that's like a Kayfun that you can lung hit. Stuff like the Billow from Pro and those kind of tanks where it has kind of a dripper setup on the inside, it's like that's all well and good, but it generally doesn't feed fast enough for you to actually hit it like a dripper and build the same builds that you would with a dripper. So you end up using thinner wire, higher resistance, you get a cooler vape, and the flavor's pretty good. This one you actually build like a Kayfun. So let's do a vape or two, just so I don't waste this liquid. Then I'm going to dump it, clean it up. We'll come back here and do a rebuild. And the vapor production isn't bad by any means. It's just not quite as dense as the Atlantis. It can't handle as much heat. And like I said, it's a little bit finicky. You'll get that random dry hit because you didn't pull hard enough. Especially when the tank is all the way full, because, you know, once it starts to get empty, there's more kind of pressure pulling it in. Its sweet spot really is right when it hits the top of the chimney. That's when you can really hit it however you want. But when it's all the way full, you got to be careful. You got to pull extra hard. And when you get towards the bottom, kind of the same thing, because generally you're going to be tilting it, right? And then it's because there's so little liquid in there, when you tilt it, it's not even going to be in contact with the juice flow channels. So you might get a dry hit that way. So usually I don't let it get any more dry than that. I mean, I guess you could say the vapor's on par with the Atlantis. The problem is you have to pull so much harder. It just feels like you're working for it more. But that's really the only downside. The flavor's so good that I can't really complain. So let's wrap it up there. I'm going to not wrap it up. Let's just pause here. It'll be instant for you. I'm just going to clean it up and we'll rebuild it. Stay tuned. All right, so you can see right here I have all the pieces apart, and I still have my old build. You can kind of see what I was going for there. That's kind of what's going on. I really don't want to turn on autofocus, but it may be better if I do. There you go. So you can kind of see that. So then you have your glass tank. I also forgot to mention it does come with replacement glass. So I did end up finding some of the other stuff it came with. So it comes with quite a bit of wire right there. And then you have your replacement screws, replacement O-rings, so on and so forth. And like I said, 2 sheets of legit organic Japanese cotton. That's what I'll be using, actually. So let's go ahead and take this apart. It's already apart. I'm just gonna undo this coil. So you can kind of see that the way it'll come built too. You have these 2 holes right here and right here. Man, it really doesn't want to focus. All right, we're turning off autofocus. There you go. Okay. So you can see that there's a hole right there and a hole right there. And a lot of people like to kind of unscrew the screws and tuck their leads through the holes and then tighten it down. That's how it comes actually, but what I've found is those legs on your coil heat up, you know, so I never liked doing that. I didn't even do it in a Kayfun, so I just wrap it around the screws, and that appears to work just fine. These screws also like to strip really easily. The best thing to do actually is just use the screwdriver that comes with it, which I don't have right now, unfortunately, but all right, so you have your chamber, you have your chimney, you have your top cap, you have your drip tip, you have your base, and you have your glass. Now this thing is really hard to get apart. It really is. Like if you don't have sticky gloves or something to grab onto it, it takes a lot to get it apart. Now this O-ring right here, it does come out. It's in there pretty good, but sometimes it gets moved around. So just be careful. Make sure it's in there and it's not blocking up your air channels or what have you. You can see it has a really big airflow hole. This bottom piece, your adjustable airflow, also comes off, like it unscrews, but again, it's really, really hard to unscrew like anything. So I tried to get it off, couldn't. It'll come off when I don't want it to, I'm sure. But for now, we're just going to leave it. There's not much down there anyway. Basically, it's the other part of this connection that's there. It's just like an airflow chamber. So let's just go ahead and lock this so I don't accidentally fire it. I like to build things on mods. And there you go. So I'll be using a 26 gauge Kanthal for this. Like I said, it comes with 24, but I really like to use it most of the time on the MVP3. And the MVP3 only goes to 30 watts, and 26 gauge works a little bit better. It gives you a little bit more vapor at 30 watts than 24 gauge does. So it's up to you what you want to use. A 24 gauge probably will hit a little bit more, like an Atlantis, even though the Atlantis does use 26, but whatever. I'm going to be wrapping it around a 2.4 millimeter screwdriver. Try to get everything out of the way, at least try to do some of this on camera. I'm going to do an open coil. I'm going to go for 6 wraps. Maybe I'll do 5 wraps this time. I don't use a coil jig. I think it actually makes it harder, but here we go. 5 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you wrap a coil for this, you want the leads going in opposite directions. You want to pull it and do half wraps. This, I guess, is a 5-6 wrap. That was way too much wire, but that's all right. I got plenty of it. I'm just going to scrunch it down. Scrunching it down usually doesn't... They spring back, right? So you're never going to get a microcoil unless you wrap a microcoil. That's pretty evenly spaced. You're going to have to go back after you attach it anyway. You'll see why. I'm going to trim this lead down just a little bit. It'll make it easier for me. All right, so there you go. That's my coil. Let's see. How do I want to do this? All right, so I kind of just lay it on there like that, right? It's never going to be perfectly center, and even when you bend these leads around under the screws, it's going to change how the coil is shaped. And I'm going to use a flathead so I can use the Phillips head to tighten down the screws. But yeah, basically, if you've ever built a Kayfun, you know how this goes. You kind of get it as close to the center as you can. Wrap the wire around the screw, pull it as tight as you can. Hold it in place, and then tighten it down with your screwdriver. I know you can't see this because my big fat hands are in the way, but you should be able to see the other one a little bit better. I'll try to do it in the other direction. All right, so you can see that right when I screwed that down, coil's way off center. If you can see that. Focus. Yeah, that's about good. All right. I always keep the screwdriver in too when I'm doing this. Helps it not get so messed up. So yeah, I'm just going to wrap that wire right around the screw like so. Try to pull it as tight as I can or push it up against something. I guess this is long enough. I can push it up against the base on the other side. Kind of like that. Came out, didn't it? Yep, it came out. Anything more than 24 gauge, you're probably not going to want to use. It's not going to get trapped under the screws very well, and those other holes, if you do want to use the holes, are actually fairly small. That should be tight enough. I'll do the twisty method to break them off. You can use wire cutters too. Alright, but now you can see how the coil is kind of diagonal and a little bit too close to the hole, etc., etc. So now is when you go back and you play. That actually wasn't too bad. One thing you definitely want to look out for is, I'm holding it upside down, maybe if I do it this way, you can see right here, this is your positive block and this is your negative block. Right? No, actually it's the other way around. This is my positive, this is my negative. So if you look at the leads, right, you don't want this lead right here touching the other block because it'll short out. So just make sure that you lift it high enough for this lead to come up. Anyway, the spacing isn't even too bad on that, but I'm just going to poke at it a little bit with another screwdriver. I'm sure it would fire fine, but I like to prove to myself that I don't need a freaking coil jig. I think they're stupid. And then just get it, center. Make sure it's as parallel or as perpendicular as you can get it. Spaced out over the hole, that type of thing. So there you go. That's the coil. Now you just want to make sure it glows evenly. I'm sure it will. But let's turn this baby back on. Oh, not the menu. All right, so 30 watts. See what happens. There you go. See, it's heating up nice and even. It's exactly what you want. So now we're going to wick it, and we are going to use the Rip Trippers pancake method. I'll kind of recreate that here for you. The general idea is you want to use way more wick than you think you need. Much easier to do with Japanese cotton. So if I was going to build a 2.4 millimeter inner diameter coil on a dripper, I would normally cut about that much. Right? You can't really tell, but I'd probably cut it right about there. But for this, I'm going to cut it way out here. I'm going to get almost twice as much wick. Just like that. So now that I have this piece, what I like to do is just twist up the end really tight. And another trick, you can lick your fingers. You're going to cut that little piece off anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now you want it, you definitely don't want to mess up your coil when you're trying to pull this through, but it's going to be tight, folks. This might actually be too much. Oh God, I think it's going to be too much. Well, that made it through, but yeah, the rest isn't going to do it. So you definitely want it to be firm when you pull it through. You want to feel some resistance. I'm going to try to salvage this piece and just cut it down a little bit. I don't know how that's going to work, though. Not good. Okay, well, it was free cotton, so try it again. You still want to use a good amount. Let's try like right there. That's like more than I would use for even a 3 millimeter inner diameter on a dripper. Okay, so let's say that much. Same thing, twist up an edge. I'm going to actually go ahead and help you see it a little better. Hopefully that's better. My hands definitely aren't as dirty as they look on camera. All right, so let's get that through. So you can see it is it's tight. Do it slowly. You don't want to mess up your coil too bad. If you're using thin wire, you probably want to do this more like a Kayfun style rather than an Atlantis style type of build. Work it back and forth. You know the drill. All right, now this part's kind of play it by ear. If you're going to do a thin liquid, you can cut it about here. Just kind of line your scissors up with the, like, just press it right up against the side of the atomizer and snip. Whoops, and it slipped. So this is going to be for like a 50-50 blend or more PG, right? And then you kind of do it like a Kayfun. You stuff it down, you know, all that stuff. However, if you're trying to use thicker liquid because you have a bunch of dripper liquid or something like that, something you're used to putting in the Atlantis, you have to cut the wicks a lot shorter. So basically, the thicker the liquid, the shorter you want the wicks to be. However, the liquid I'm using now, what the hell is it? I'm using Big City Vapor North Pole, which is a, it tastes like an Andes mint. It's actually pretty good. Now, I don't really do menthol. But this is a 50-50 blend, and you can see it is not particularly thick at all. But I still cut the wicks really, really short, and it works just fine. Oh, these scissors are getting dull. I'm probably going to end up hitting this button by accident and burning this thing. Alright, so you can see the wicks are super, super short. God, these scissors are starting to suck. They're about a year old. So, alright, so the easiest way to do it now is to just kind of, I guess, round it off. You don't have, you know, pointy cotton edges. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to trim down what you don't need, which is actually most of it. But if you're doing this pancake style thing, apparently, you want it to kind of look like a pancake and be round, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't call it the pancake. So that's not great. A little bit more on one side, but that's all right. We'll just pull it through. Pull it through. All right, then you go and fluff it up. See that? So now you have what's kind of a roundish shape. The other side is significantly fluffier. Anyway, it doesn't have to be perfect. Basically what you want is you want liquid pretty much filling up as much of that chamber as it can without leaking into the hole. That's really the goal here. So let's prime it, and you'll see how thin this liquid is. You can see it kind of soaks right in. All right, so once you get some liquid on there, go back and kind of flatten it out. I try to get it to like stick to the side here. I just push it against the side and let it stick. It doesn't move so much. So now the liquid isn't always going to come so high up here. It's definitely not going to come all the way to the base. You need some sort of wicking material down towards the bottom, or it's not going to wick right. What this is also doing is if the liquid does come up too high, it kind of blocks it from going into the airflow hole. It's going to get absorbed first before it actually leaks. So that's another plus to doing this. And I like to make it kind of look even though I didn't cut it evenly, which is a bigger issue here. But yeah, just go and flatten it. Flatten it, flatten it, flatten it. And then the idea is that's supposed to look like a pancake. I don't really see it, but whatever. Same thing on this side. This one's actually a little bit shorter, but again, just kind of stick it. Stick it to the wall. Balls to the wall. Definitely more wick on the other side. It doesn't really look like I'm doing much, does it? Well, I actually am. All right, so when you're all said and done, it's going to look kind of like that. I'm going to prime it one more time. Good measure. Give it a quick test fire. Yep. Basically what I look for in a test fire, you should know this already. If you're watching this, you've probably built before, but you definitely don't want it to glow while there's liquid on it. If you hit the button for like 3 seconds and the coil glows, it means you're going to get a nasty fucking burn taste. So always check that. Now I'm just going to carefully put this on. If you look right down there, it should not be touching the sides. Really shouldn't be touching anything. Excuse me. You want the juice channels, right, to be open. It won't leak unless you're using like a super thin liquid and pulling really, really hard. But if you want to vape it like an Atlantis, this is kind of what you need to do. So yeah, that's what you're going for. Put the chimney on. Put the glass on. Put the top cap on. And this is where it really, really gets tight. Really tight. I'm going to try to leave it a little bit looser just so it's easier to get apart later. But this is the fill valve right here. See that? Now it's open. Now it's closed. That little white piece is actually what seals it. So now it's all the way sealed. And now it's open. So when you go to fill this, the first thing you want to do is close your juice flow. Because if you have both that and that open, your liquid's just going to get sucked right into the chamber. But watch how fast this is to fill. You kind of just open it up, close your juice flow, stick your bottle in there. And always leave an air bubble. And then you just close it. Just like that. And now you can open your juice flow, or your airflow, and you're good to go. So there you go. That is how you rebuild and fill the Lemo 2. Oh, the drip tip's not lubed up. So the drip tip is also tight. You didn't see it before. It's a double O-ring drip tip. So it actually is very secure in there. All right, let's give it a quick test vape and make sure it's everything I hoped it could be, and then some. Yep, it's working. So that's the build. Let's zoom back out and we'll talk some more. Stay tuned. There you have it, folks. That's your ELeaf Lemo 2 build. Very much like a Kayfun. So what do I think of it? Well, I really, really liked it at first. Now I kind of think it's okay. Now, the build quality is great. I really wish it wasn't so friggin' hard to get apart. I mean, if you seal it down and tighten it, it's really hard to get apart, especially this bottom piece. Like, it seems to only come off when I don't want it to. Like, if I actually want to get it off, I can't get it off. The other thing is when you try to unscrew the bottom, you never know where it's going to unscrew from. What's supposed to happen is it's supposed to come off in like a reverse order from the way you put it on, right? So you kind of like, I guess you can undo the top first and it works that way, but like half the time it'll unscrew the chamber from the chimney, you know? Like it just unscrews from random places and it's weird. And you, like I said, it is awesome that it's rebuildable, that you can hit like an Atlantis, but there's like an asterisk there. It's like, yeah, you can hit it like an Atlantis, but you have to build it a certain way and you can't be using thick liquid and you have to pull really hard. And I just want something where I can like hit it as hard as soft as I want, like the Atlantis. Like I got an Atlantis right here. It's really tough to burn. It's using the same wire. What do I have this at? 30 watts or 35? 30. And I'm perfectly comfortable doing that. I would even do that at 35 to 40 watts. I can pull all day, chain vape all day, max VG liquid. This one, it's a little bit more finicky, and I just wish it didn't do that. And I know what you're thinking. What you're probably thinking is, oh, with the sub-tank or the sub-tank mini with the RBA section. My problem with those is that it spits into my mouth. I don't know why. You would think that like there wouldn't really be enough, or there'd be too much like space, right, to like spit all the way up. But if I don't pull just right on the sub-tank with the RBA head, I just get like these little juice splatters on my tongue, and it's really annoying. Now, I don't get that with this. but I also have to pull really, really hard. So the sub tank, I have to pull really softly to not get, you know, juice splatter. And this one I have to pull really hard to make sure that it wicks. So it's kind of, you know, a double-edged sword there. But for the flavor's great. I mean, I would say it's better than the sub tank, which is kind of weird because they're both kind of the same design. I just find that I get better flavor with this. Now, why I usually do microcoils when I do rebuilds. I did not do a microcoil here because it tends to burn. Again, it doesn't wick fast enough. So when the heat is concentrated with those microcoils, it kind of puts all the heat right in the center, which is, you know, normally okay. But for some reason on this, it just burns. So I do an open coil, and I figured I'd try to like recreate the Atlantis style coil. So I use the same gauge wire, the same type of, you know, wrap open coil. But I mean, other than those little things, it's actually a damn good tank, and it looks pretty good. I kind of like how it's not too ribbed for her pleasure. You know, it doesn't have like all of these things going on. It's just very simple stainless steel, goes with everything. And that sound you might have heard, that little just that like slight gurgle, that's actually what I like to hear. I like to hear that with this because that means that it's wicking. Awesome flavor, awesome vapor. It's actually way better with a rebuild. This is probably a better build than the one I had in there before, even though the wick didn't come out perfectly. But again, if you're trying to use thick liquid, what you may be able to do, and like I said, I haven't played around with this that much. Basically what I did, the story of the ELeaf, is we got it as a sample. I built it with a microcoil, generally the kind of the same way I would with a Kayfun, and a vape like a Kayfun, but it was too cool of a vape, so I closed the airflow and hit it, you know, the cigarette style drags, and that worked perfectly fine if you want to vape it like a Kayfun, but I wanted to vape it like an Atlantis. I wanted a rebuildable, I could vape like an Atlantis. So I tried Max VG liquid. I did a couple different builds and settled on this one. This one definitely wicks the best. But what you might be able to do, I don't know yet, is use Max VG liquid and stuff the wick in there. Like how I just showed you to do it with like the Rip Tripper style pancake wick. Don't do that. Do it like a Kayfun. Stuff the wick in there, but leave this open. Leave the valve open. And the liquid should kind of freely go in there, but the wick is going to stop it. So it'll kind of always be saturated. Now, if you leave it for any amount of time, you're probably going to want to close it. But I mean, that's easy enough. It's literally, you just turn it to open the valve. So, I mean, if you've ever taken a straw and put it into your glass of water, covered the top and pulled it out, and the water's still in there, that's basically what it's doing, except instead of coming out of the bottom of the straw when you let go, it wants to go into the chamber and then through the air hole and then out these air holes and leak all over the place. That's where it wants to go, but the fact that it's sealed is keeping it from doing that. As soon as you open that valve, there's no pressure holding it in there anymore. So yeah, it'll just do that. If you, especially with thin liquids, and if you wick it like this with the juice flow slots perfectly open, it's definitely going to leak. But if you do get dry hits and pulling on it is just not your thing, right? You could just open the valve for like 5 to 10 seconds and it'll kind of work its way in there, and then you close it again. It does. The liquid definitely requires some encouragement, right, to start wicking right. But once it does, it works pretty well. And I actually might turn this up to 35 watts just to see if I can. Damn it, I overshot it. I always overshoot it with this fucking thing. All right, 35. Here we go. So it seems to work pretty well. I think I'll just keep it at 35 for now. But again, I'm using a pretty thin liquid. This is this is Big City Vapor North Pole. It's supposed to be a seasonal flavor, but I can get it year round. But I mean, it's about a 50-50. And the menthol thins it out even more. So the other one I've tried is Big City Portland, which is a pretty good flavor. It's like a blackberry cobbler type flavor. And it's a little bit thicker than that, and it still works with this build. And like I said, Max VG still works, but there's trade-offs. You know, you gotta wick it differently, which I kind of do anyway now at this point, or use a lower wattage or voltage, either one. But the problem with that is your vape isn't as warm. So yeah, you kind of get more vapor because it's all VG and everything like that. But not really, because you have to turn the wattage down so it wicks slower, and yeah. So if you build it a specific way, you can totally hit it like an Atlantis, and that's pretty much, I would never hit this like a Kayfun. I got the Kayfun V4 clone. Like, if I want a Kayfun, I'll vape a Kayfun. But this I wanted a rebuildable, again, that hits like an Atlantis. And for the most part, it works. I just don't like having to friggin' suck on it so hard. But it is working, and I actually think that this helped. This rebuild helped a little bit. I don't know why. I did it exactly the same, but this one seems to be wicking better. But yeah, ever since I did the wicking, since I started doing open coils, and since I started pulling harder on it, I can get it up to 35 watts and chain vape it consistently without it burning. Every now and then you'll hear that little tss, you know, after you hit it, and that's not good. But for the most part, it wicks pretty well. You definitely want to use more wick than you think you need. You want to cut it shorter for thicker liquids, and as you can see right now, it's not leaking, and that's a pretty thin liquid, and I cut them really, really short. So not really an issue there. There's a few more things I want to try that if you want to try and comment and let me know if it works, is doing the same type of build, but leaving the bottom of the wick. So when you do your little pancake thing, leave the bottom longer than the top, because I'm curious to see that, like, how much better it wicks if like the wick is actually down at the base without covering the juice flow slot. So I might do that. The other downside, and I've gotten kind of jaded from using the Squape Reloaded, actually the Squape and the Squape Reloaded, and the Kayfun version 4, is most of the time nowadays you can dump your tank, refill, or let me start over. You can rebuild it and you can take your tank apart without dumping the liquid, and you can't do that here, especially because, like I said before, it comes apart randomly when you try to unscrew it. Like, it doesn't always unscrew from the same place, right? So it's basically impossible. You have to drain the tank or use it all the way down and then dump it before you can rebuild it, unfortunately. The good news is it's not that big of a tank. So if you really want to rebuild it and you don't want to waste liquid, just vape it real hard for like 15, 20 minutes, and you'll be pretty much at the bottom anyway. And like I said, once you get to the top of the chimney, you're pretty much 1/4 of the way full. There's not a whole lot of space right here. So that's it. It also, where's my MVP? It looks really, really good on the MVP. I mean, I don't think it looks bad here. But the MVP, I mean, look at this attention to detail. First of all, it fits flush all the way down. I bet you this isn't going to work either. Yeah. All right. So for some reason, the Lemo is not firing on the MVP right now. It's not making a connection, and I'm not sure why. But if you look at it from that angle, you can see how it lines up perfectly with this end. It lines up perfectly here, and it lines up perfectly here. They put like exactly like from dead center of the pin, it's 11 millimeters to any side. It's an 11 millimeter radius. 22 millimeter tanks look perfect on the MVP. Now, something I've noticed with the Lemo, and I don't know if this is carried over for the Lemo too, and I'll compare it to the Atlantis, but if you look at the 510 threads, I don't know if it's going to focus. I might have to manually focus for you. All right, let's manual focus. All right, so you see how little threading there is compared to the Atlantis? See that? There's like literally half as much threading. Now it looks like it's the same length almost. I mean, it should be the same length. Now, if I can take the Atlantis and throw it on the MVP, right? I know I'm out of focus. Hold on. If I take the Atlantis and throw it on the MVP, you can see it's reading 0.6. Now, this just started happening today. Again, it has less threading, but it's like the same length. I put it on the MVP and I screw it down all the way, even with a spring-loaded pin. It's been giving me that, which is the same thing that happens when there's no Addy connected. Oh, that's the other thing. This thing leaks out of the friggin' drip tip if you turn it over. I don't know why. I don't know if that's coming out of the chamber because I have it wick that way, or if that's because I just pull so hard that it pulls that liquid up into the drip tip. I haven't really gotten liquid in my mouth, but every time I turn it over, it fucking leaks on me. And it's kind of annoying. All right, so final thoughts on the Lemo. At a score out of 10, I would give it 7.5 out of 10. When it works really, really well. You get excellent flavor. You can hit it like an Atlantis. It's rebuildable. It's perfect in that sense. The downsides are it's a finicky build. You have to build it just right, especially if you're used to max VG liquids. I mean, I know for me, I normally use a dripper. I mean, I got the Troll right now in the Marley box. And in this one, I have some Econo Clouds. Right? I got this from Charlotte Vapes not too long ago. This is $10 for a 30 mil if you're interested. It's a pretty good deal. Anyway, you probably only have max VG liquid. Like, the only two things I use really are Atlanta style tanks, or the sub tank, or the VCT, and drippers. So, you know, naturally, I just always have max VG liquid on me, and when I go to this, that's the liquid I want to use. I want to use the max VG liquid, and I really can't. Every time I hit it, I'm scared that I'm going to get a dry hit. Like, I'm conscious of it every time I hit it. You know, it rarely dry hits anymore, but again, I'm using thinner liquid. So that's a downside. The other downside is the leaking out of the mouthpiece, which, you know, again, I'm used to drippers. I have like that sixth sense where I always have to keep it upright no matter how I hold it. Like, I know that if I tip it, it's going to leak. But when I was showing you right there and trying to show you the menu, it just dripped right out on the table and on my hands and stuff. So that's a little bit of an annoyance. And for some reason, something's going on with that pin. I don't know if it's the threading or the length or if it needs to be a little bit longer, but everything that I have thrown at the MVP, it can fire it. It even fired the Lemo too for, like 3 days, and then like randomly, because actually what happened was I was in the car and I was using this and it died. And then at a red light, you know, I reached in my backpack, pulled this out, screwed it on, and it didn't work. And I'm like, fuck. So then I got to go reach in, find my Atlantis, take that off, screw that on. I mean, it was just annoying. So those are the downsides: leaking, the finicky build if you want to hit it like an Atlantis, and and it's a pain in the ass to get apart. Like, if you're going to get this, make sure you have like sticky gloves or something. You know, you can get them at Walmart. There's these cheap gloves that have this like really sticky material on one side so you can really grip things. Or one of those, I don't know what you call them. They're like circular. They're like that big, and they're flat like a pancake. And they're sticky, you know? Like, sometimes you can use them to like clog your drain. If you're going to take a bath, you just kind of put it over there. You can use it to open jars and stuff. You might need one of those if you want to get this apart. So, I mean, that can be viewed as a plus or a minus. I mean, on the downside, it's really, really hard to get it apart and clean it and all that. On the upside, it's solid. I mean, it's a very, very, very solid tank, and it's sealed very, very well. And you could tell because when you do get those dry hits, you can open this up and boom, dry hit's gone because you just open the fill valve. So it is definitely sealed. But I can't give it a perfect score because of those things. For the most part, it is a damn good tank, and from what I understand, it's a very appreciated improvement on the Lemo, just because of that fill valve. I also like the look of it better. I do know how the Lemo looks. It was kind of plain Jane, and this is still plain. Like I said, I like that it doesn't have all that ribbing like a lot of those other tanks do. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's plain. I mean, it looks good. It's a good looking tank, and it's 22 millimeters, looks good on most shit. So in closing, I would say that this is worth the money. I have no idea how much it's going to cost. Probably not too much more than the original Lemo. But it's worth it. I mean, for someone like me, I've been waiting for a rebuildable Kayfun style that you hit like a dripper or you hit like an Atlantis, and that fits the bill pretty much. What I'd like to see, though, is for them to kind of improve upon this chamber chimney system and maybe add some like giant holes, like juice flow holes. So like you build it, you take your wick and kind of do it like the pancake thing, but you make sure that those wicks are pressed up against the hole, right? And have juice flow holes that are just about as big as the holes in the Atlantis, so it just soaks up that max VG liquid. If you do want to hit this like an Atlantis, I would highly recommend using a thinner liquid. 80-20 or what, you know, that's usually considered max VG. That's kind of your maximum. 100% VG if you can find it. I don't know if that would even work. But just wick it the right way. Experiment though. I mean, God forbid anyone finds something better than what I just built in here, right? Please comment if you do, because I would love to find a way to have this check all the boxes. Max VG liquid and no dry hits, and still able to use the higher wattages. So I hope you enjoyed the video. That is the ELeaf Lemo 2 RTA. This is MadVaper Gaming. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I stream games, all types of games, 5 days a week. I'm going to try to do more vape reviews that don't overlap with the MadVape's feature overviews. Again, those aren't reviews. I know a lot of people say that they are, but they're not. This was a review. This is what I think of the ELeaf. Overall, it's good. Good build quality. Pyrex looks great. Just falls short slightly, just a little bit when it comes to hitting it like an Atlantis, and really doesn't make the case for rebuildables once again overtaking this. Because if you remember, when the Atlantis came out, they had that, Photoshop picture of that guy, like, oh my god, with all these tools and wires and shit. I like rebuilding. I will always prefer rebuildables over this. But for the pain in the ass that you have to go through to get it to hit like this, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's the shiny factor why I'm still using this, or if it's just out of principle, I'd rather rebuild. You do get better flavor. I will say that. You get much better flavor out of this than you do out of any of the pre-made coils you can find. So if flavor's your thing, then yeah, this is probably your tank. It's a Kayfun. You can hit like an Atlantis. What more can you say? Please comment, like, follow, subscribe, all that crap. Twitch.tv/MadVaper is my gaming channel. Check that out 5 nights a week. I'm going to try to upload more content to YouTube. You'll find vape reviews, you'll find Let's Plays, you'll find live streams that have been pre-recorded. I'm going to try to do a lot more with the YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe and check back. And thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Later.